Ant-Thology Salamander, written by Anthony Salomone. Audiobook, performed by Anthony Salomone. Introduction. Dear reader, it is commonly said that first impressions are important to get across correctly. Yet I do not believe that this ever truly occurs. To have an accurate impression of a person, you judge them based on simple intuition, which is inherently biased. I seem to be stating the obvious. The point I am attempting to convey is that first impressions are merely surface level. To properly evaluate someone, you must develop an intimate yet personable knowledge of them. I am writing, or more accurately typing, this introduction to provide personal context regarding who I am. Once you have a rudimentary understanding of who I am, you may have a deeper understanding of the works I have produced. First impressions are important, yet they lack intimate insight. My name is Anthony Salomone. If you are curious, my middle name is Charles. I was born on September 23rd of 2007. Throughout my youth, I have done quite a bit of traveling. I was born in Arizona, moved to New Hampshire, moved back to Arizona, and then moved to Massachusetts. Throughout my travels, I have attended more schools than I would prefer to admit. I am the chatty one in a conversation since I ramble nonstop about my passions. However, during most social situations, I tend to be an introvert. I grew up passionate about history, literature, film, and music. Paleontology was my first love, as I can name nearly every obscure dinosaur and extinct animal known to science. Yet, as my interests developed, I became an enthusiast of cinematic artistry and acting. I am also a science fiction and mythology nerd. Regarding hobbies, I enjoy drawing, reading, and creative writing, along with filmmaking and acting. The major revelation of my life was embracing Christianity and overcoming my preconceived skepticism. Once I had embraced faith, I was baptized and discovered God as a truly personable friend. My future ventures are uncertain, as is the case with most humans and extraterrestrials. I am certain that after all the places I've been, the people I've met, and the experiences I've lived, the future is not something to be fearful of. Rather, it should be approached with a willingness to change. The creative writing works you are about to delve into consist of 2 screenplays, a novelette, song lyrics, poems, a film treatment, a research paper, and a photo album. My venture into creative writing began when I was 11 years old in 5th grade. I was fascinated by Jupiter's icy moon Europa and the speculative biology of alien life. In my 5th grade classroom, I drew 2 aliens on a piece of paper. The first alien was a hybrid of a gorilla and a lobster. The second alien was a kraken composed of glass that had green bioluminescent neurons. Throughout my elementary, middle, and high school years, I conceived an alien ecosystem within my imagination that inhabited Europa. I created my speculative ecosystem for Europa as an atheist, yet I wrote its narrative as a devoted Christian. My interpretation of Europa would see fruition in the novelette Europa Under the Ice. I have produced stories that would translate into my passion for film. The first screenplay that I honed was The Lonely Giant Squid. I wrote the original draft when I was in 9th grade. The screenplay is a tragedy inspired by the Kraken myth. The screenplay for Beyond Dreams and Reality is best described as an acceptance that I have weird dreams. About 90% of Beyond Dreams and Reality adapts dreams I dreamt throughout my life. Within this screenplay, I rearranged my dreams into a cohesive narrative. These bizarre dreams include a talking anglerfish, a dragon atop an ice mountain, metamorphosis into a dachshund, being chased in school by dinosaurs, a colossus composed of pink, blossoming flowers, and flying in a cathedral with singing ghosts, among many more absurdities. The Parting Paths film treatment is a movie outline for a romantic drama with Christian themes. The Purest Form of Cinema is a paper I wrote for my U.S. history class, and it is about how silent films embody the essence of pure cinema. The poems we cast ourselves off, our timely pastures in a standstill, and I'm speechless upon witnessing arranged rocks and infinite pastures, were written for the Crab and Quills, Rock Walls, and Open Pastures 2025 Writing Contest. These 3 poems resulted in me receiving 3rd place for the Crab and Quills Student Scholarship Awards. Once I discovered my passion for poetry, I wrote Calamity of the Chimera, which is a collection of poems. The lyrics for the music album Reaching Out are an endeavor to create music that encompasses my favorite genres. If you would like to listen to the songs from the album Reaching Out, then please visit my personal YouTube channel, Anthony Salomon Presents, where I have posted all of the finalized songs, including a music video. On my YouTube channel, I have also uploaded videos that I directed, scripted, and acted in. The photography album is the fruition of a personal hobby and expression of how singular the eye's perspective is. In summation, Ant-Thology Salamander is a time capsule of a teenager who had dreams he could not confine to himself. Each human being has an undeniably unique mind. We all have stories in our heads that only we are capable of dreaming. This portfolio is a collection of my imagination, yet it is unparalleled by the untapped potential within humanity. Ant-Thology Salamander is a book that resulted from years of dedication and a goal to go beyond the mundane. I hope that a fire can be lit within our imaginations that ignites the truth of self-discovery. In Greek mythology, the Titan Prometheus gifted fire to humanity, which allowed our species to gain independence and inherit the earth. We can ignite the virtues of Prometheus within our souls. We can push past preconceived notions and challenge ourselves as we gain the most important form of independence, the independence to think critically. As a people, we have a choice to be the modern Prometheus. Always remember, never settle for less. It just makes sense. Sincerely, Anthony Salomon. Europa Under the Ice. Novellette, written by Anthony Salomon. Part 1. The Final Frontier. Are we alone in the universe? Do aliens exist? These are timeless yet frequent questions asked by humanity. I must admit they were queries of mine until I ventured under the ice of Europa. This is Captain Amir Jefferson reporting for duty. The record accurately states that on January 7th of 2110, I commanded NASA's first ever manned expedition to Europa. For the scientific record, I will recount the following events. The best place to start would be long before my birth in 2057. Yes, I know I'm old or middle-aged, as glass half full kind of people prefer to say. Around 18 million years ago, an asteroid crashed into Europa's surface, causing a crater that shattered the ice. This asteroid crater is known as Puil. Physically, Puil resembles a bullet that shattered a sheet of glass. For me, it was a gateway into the underworld. The expedition to Europa had 2 goals in mind. The first was to land the first astronaut on the Galilean moon. The second was to explore Europa's oceans to determine the existence of alien life. I was selected to lead this expedition based on my prior feats. In 2092, I took part in the 3rd trip to Mars. I was also stationed on the ZSS, Zeus Space Station, during its construction from 2095 to 2099. It's due to the ZSS orbiting Jupiter that the mission to Europa was greenlit, and I was recommended for leadership. After many months of preparation on Earth, I was ferried via rocket ship to the ZSS, which felt like an old home to me. On board the ZSS was when I first met my fellow crew members. They were among the elite of NASA's astronauts. I remember floating through the hallways of the station, which I hadn't seen in 11 years. I was impressed with how it had been kept up to date with decent maintenance. Hopefully, this was a good sign of my crew's expertise. I made my way into the station's lounge, where one of my crew members resided. A youthful man yanked out an earbud. He stood up quickly, stumbling a bit before regaining his balance to stand at attention. The young man chuckled nervously and introduced himself. Sorry, I was a little dizzy. Welcome aboard the Zeus space station. Astronaut Koji Ryochi reporting, sir. I am this expedition's astrobiologist and medic. If we uncover life on Europa, I will gladly analyze all the organic and chemical compounds. Who knows? We may make a revolutionary discovery. With your optimism, we are bound to revolutionize. I shook Koji's hand. Koji, I have gone over all of your records, and I'm impressed. It is an honor to be this mission's designated exploration leader. Now, where is the third and final member of this expedition, our engineer and pilot, Cynthia Carolini? Captain, I believe she's finishing her mechanical evaluation on the Europa 4 shuttle, Koji answered. Well then, let's conclude preparations to board the Europa 4 and begin launch. Once we reached the space station's hangar, I saw in all its glory the Europa 4. The mass of the shuttle filled up half of the hangar. It was positioned like a landed airplane. It was shaped similarly to the letter V with a triangular cockpit. The Europa 4 had been intentionally constructed for this mission. Its cockpit could detach from the wings to become a submersible. In the hangar's repair station, Cynthia was suited with a blowtorch and helmet. As sparks flew from a Goliath-sized exosuit, I kept a safe distance. You must be our engineer. It is a pleasure to make an acquaintance. How is the exosuit's current performance? Cynthia took off her helmet. Did you say something? Her eyes widened. You're Captain Amir Jefferson, one of this station's founders. Shaking my hand vigorously, my wrist popped. Cynthia Carolini, I'll be the mission's designated engineer, and I'm your co-pilot. Now, I must admit that I am a major fan of your work on Mars. I remember the news reports of how, when the mission rocket had faulty thrusters, you single-handedly did repairs in space amid voyage. To be honest, my crew provided me with radio communication, although I always appreciate meeting a fan. Koji gestured towards the shuttle. Captain, may I give you a tour of the Europa 4? Very well. However, we need to launch within the hour, so load the exosuit on board as soon as possible. I strolled inside the Europa 4 hall, triggering the emergency system. I was met with the blaring of a red alarm alert. Unidentified human, access data required for entry. The emergency system screeched in a monotone crackle. I'm so sorry, Captain. I will enter you into the system so the space shuttle won't assume you're a Martian burglar. Cynthia frantically tapped away on a keypad. Within the hour, the Europa 4 hull was fully loaded with everything required, from extra spacesuits with diving apparatus, harpoon guns, camera equipment, and the exosuit. I began the launch countdown as Cynthia started up the engines. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a successful liftoff. From the command tower of the Zeus space station, the administration crew opened the hangar doors. The Europa 4 blasted out of the hangar. The immense vastness of space is utterly impossible to describe, as it can only be perceived. It was truly beautiful how the ZSS grew dimmer in the distance, as the great mass of Jupiter filled the stretch of space. Jupiter's clouds swirled like smoke, the great red spot ominously reminding me of the ever-present dangers of space exploration. Koji couldn't contain his excitement upon witnessing Jupiter's red spot. Did you guys know that Jupiter's red spot has been around for over 300 years? However, it has been decreasing in size. For example, when Captain Jefferson's parents were kids, the spot was an oval. Now, in the year 2110, it has become much more circular. What's most interesting is that we have no idea as to why the red spot is getting smaller. Admittedly captivated, I stated, there are many unknowns in this universe, Koji. Today, I hope we can answer one of those. what lies beneath the ice of Europa. After passing the red spot of Jupiter, our shuttle soared across the planet's many moons and its slim asteroid belt. Ahead of us was our destination, the ice moon Europa. From the side facing the sun, Europa's surface reflected shimmering rays of sunlight. The surface was entirely white and littered with orangish scars. What shocked me most was how from space, the surface-shattering impact of Puil was crisply visible from a grand distance. Cynthia nodded her head at me. Looks like Europa was shot stone dead. I have no idea what kind of asteroid could create a crater such as Puil. Do note that the impact crater of Puil will be our entry point under the ice, I replied. As Europa 4 entered Europa's atmosphere, we all felt the gravitational pull nearly yank us off our seats. My harness tightened, causing me to gasp and wheeze. Are you feeling well, Captain? Koji inquired. If necessary, I have the proper training to reattach your harness. I wheezed a brief response. Just an effective seatbelts. I wheezed a brief response. Just an effective seatbelt safety. My breathing had recovered by the time we flew over Connemara Chaos. The X-shaped scars in the ice were positioned directly north of Puil. Being relatively close to Connemara Chaos made it a wonder to fly over. The Chaos terrain reminded me of Earth's greatest canyons, yet those of Europa are unparalleled in their peculiar nature. The Europa 4 flew south of Connemara Chaos. The icy surface became rougher and covered with the reddish-brown substance. Hundreds of miles away from the Puil crater, white streaks shattered through the ice. Once the shuttle was directly over Puil, we observed the immense central dark spot, which spans 25 miles in diameter. Whatever impacted Europa and created Puil must be utterly immense to have caused significant scarring. I gave the order to begin the descent into the crater. Cynthia returned a thumbs up and notified the crew. We will begin our descent into Puil. Inside the Europa 4, brief turbulence rattled throughout the shuttle as its thrusters shifted. Now the shuttle's thrusters maneuvered to begin our descent into Puil. Outside the window, I could glimpse the shattered layers of ice, tinted with a reddish-brown hue. As the Europa 4 continued its descent, the thrusters increased faster and faster. The ice became a shimmering blur, inevitably drowned out by the darkness. The deeper we went, the sunlight continued to diminish. The sunlight's familiarity was a memory by the time we reached 5 miles below the surface. At 14.5 miles into the ice, Cynthia slowed the Europa 4 thrusters. In front of us was a chunk of space rock, frozen within the ice. Inconceivable, I proclaimed. Based on the impact crater that created Puil, any physical material of the asteroid should have been incinerated. Yet here is a piece, still preserved within the ice. Koji, who was as curious as I was, inquired, can we explore the asteroid fragments of Puil? Or use anything to take a sample? Cynthia had the answer. We'll have to land before we can explore it. However, once we land, we can utilize the exosuit's mining equipment. The Europa 4 briefly descended no more than a few thousand feet until it halted. Cynthia and I each flickered a red switch to begin hull separation. The vessel's cockpit maneuvered down and detached from the shuttle's wings. The wings of the Europa 4 followed their autopilot system to return to the ZSS, while the cockpit was converted into a submarine called Typhon. The submersible plunged into the extraterrestrial ocean. The Typhon had a triangular hull that retained the space shuttle's cockpit and cargo hold. Propulsion was achieved through energy thrusters, which had a propeller backup system. Co-piloting the submarine with Cynthia, we dived deeper into the depths of Europa's oceanic underworld. End of part 1. Part 2. We are not alone. Europa's ocean is a murky abyss devoid of sunlight. The first sample we needed to take was of the water. This would have been Koji's job, yet he graciously offered me the honor of being the first human to swim in Europa's ocean. I put on my diving suit and attached an umbilical to the Typhon. With the swoosh of the entry door, I was drifting in the ocean. The water's consistency was akin to that of Earth. Using a research capsule, I effortlessly filled it with water. As I began to reel myself into the submarine, I was chilled. I glanced at something in the corner of my eye. As inconceivable as it was, a small green light approached me. The green light halted in front of my helmet. The light was an alien that resembled a glowing green shrimp with a single blue eye. I radioed Cynthia. "Are you guys seeing this? Aliens are real." "This is Cynthia, over. We have a visual." "Ha! You should see Koji's face." The glowing shrimp I called glowies darted away from me. Out of the dark appeared a miraculous sight. A swarm of glowies formed a mass around the submarine. Inside the cockpit, Koji and Cynthia were ecstatic. Cynthia radioed in. She was breathless. "Captain, we are going in the history books." I returned to the submarine and joined the crew inside the cockpit. At once, everyone turned towards me. It was a moment of true ecstasy until an alien emerged into view. It was a 31-foot ray glowing with blue wings and purple spots. The creature we called a luminescent current ray gulped down a whole clump of glowies. The remaining glowies darted in opposite directions. The luminescent current ray bumped into the submarine. Our seats shook. Before our combined fear could amass, the luminescent current ray gracefully drifted away, without regard for our existence. The Typhon ventured into the depths, for we had an ocean's worth of fauna to catalog. Koji analyzed the water, discovering that, as expected, it was salty and composed of H2O. Cynthia used the Typhon's sonar system to locate aliens, while Koji would give them names. The first biome we explored was Europa's open ocean. Within this biome, we found many creatures, primarily more glowies, which are the foundation of Europa's ecosystem. These minuscule aliens are at the bottom of the food chain. There were other peaceful aliens, such as the glow eel. At 11 feet long, this alien had green bioluminescence, bouncing across its white body. The glow squid was another alien, with primarily green bioluminescence. This is incredible! The glow squid has sexual dimorphism. The female glow squid has blue bioluminescence, whereas the male has red. Notice the horns on their rear mantle. This female's horns face backward with two protrusions, whereas the male's horns face forward, Koji elaborated. What about their many arms, including the one with the spiked horn? Cynthia asked. Koji had the answer. The glow squid's 4 small arms are used for feeding. The 5th, longer tentacle is tipped with a dual horn that is used for communication. The glow squid's communication was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. They gathered around each other, and their blue or red lights flashed at varying rates. Koji informed me that this is similar to many deep-sea fish on Earth that use light and flashes for hunting and communication. Yet this abyss was not only home to graceful creatures. On the sonar, Cynthia detected a swift alien that Koji named the Dumbo eel. This 7-foot-long blue eel had a buck-toothed jaw with 2 proportionally large orange fins extending from its head. The orange fins achieved rapid propulsion. As the Cyclops chased the alien, it did not tire. The Dumbo eel halted and followed an odd pink lure with fleshy nodules lining it. The Dumbo eel was hypnotized by the lure. Its bioluminescence dulled to a spectral white. The jaws of an ice char snapped the Dumbo eel in half. This was when we learned all of Europa's life forms had green blood. The ice char convergently resembled a bulky, oval-shaped shark. However, this alien had a stumpy tail and a pink lure. Most extraordinary of its features was the shards of ice shielding its body. The ice acted as an armor. It was created by pores lining the ice shar's body. These pores froze the surrounding water onto the alien's body. So, Koji, are these alien things like the monsters from those campy movies I caught you watching back at base? Honestly, I don't understand how you can be entertained by guys jumping around in rubber suits, Cynthia asked with a smirk. Monsters? Firstly, those guys in rubber suits are astute performers portraying strange beasts, properly known in Japan as kaiju. Secondly, neither the aliens of Europa nor kaiju are monsters. In fact, they are highly complex, autonomous organisms that live in unison with their ecosystem. Koji gestured with his pointer finger. From what I can tell, these aliens and your kaiju are both something only scholarly geeks can truly appreciate. Cynthia dramatized a baffled expression. When we get back to Earth, I'm going to show you a real kaiju movie, and then you'll gain a true appreciation for the art form, Koji blurted. That's a date. I know that on the moon they have some of the best movie theaters. Cynthia practically jumped out of her seat. Koji's eyes widened in contemplation, like he either made a massive mistake or won the lottery. I interrupted the conversation by pointing out an abundance of the 10-foot-long Europa jellyfish. They drifted through the water with 4 paddles while flicking their tendrils. Further into the depths were the emperor jellyfish, about 3 times the size of their smaller relatives, yet considerably more laid back. Among the most diverse aliens are the crowdfish, which were first discovered thanks to a bit of unprofessionalism. Cynthia, do you have any strong opinions regarding fish? Koji cheekily remarked. Well, the only fish I'm especially fond of are filleted. So then, you might not be fond of that fish. Koji gestured to a section of the window that had a sucker mouth stuck to it. Cynthia shuddered. The alien was a crowdfish. They had blue bodies, purple spots, and red fins. These fish had sucker mouths and lived together in crowds. There is a diverse variation of crowdfish, which includes a predatory variant. The crowd scavenger is one such variation that is maroon and green, with notably having toothed jaws. The most bizarre organism we observed was the decompression snatcher. This alien is the combination of 2 creatures in a symbiotic relationship. As hatchlings, the decompression fish, which is a yellow-headed variant of the crowdfish, fuses its sucker mouth with the snatcher crab. The snatcher crab serves as the fish's mandibles. Once mature, the symbiotic alien is 24 feet long and has balloons in its abdomen that regulate its buoyancy. This alien was discovered after some crowd scavengers had chewed the Typhon's left thruster. Needing to make repairs, Cynthia and I suited up in diving suits. We went to the rear of the Typhon with the replacement part and a harpoon. As we installed the new thruster, Cynthia wouldn't stop talking. Captain Jefferson, this is like that time on Mars when you were once a daring astronaut. What do you mean, when? I'm still a daring astronaut. I was humored. When we unjammed the thruster, I removed a crowd scavenger carcass. Cynthia installed the new component. We began swimming back to the Typhon's entry valve with a harpoon gun in hand. I prepared to enter the Typhon. Cynthia screamed over the radio as I turned back to see a decompression snatcher zeroing in on its intended prey. Cynthia, in the clutches of the decompression snatcher, ascended above me as the alien's balloons expanded. Upon reflection, I assumed the carcass we removed attracted the decompression snatcher. I hoisted my harpoon gun and took a shot. Miss. I fumbled the harpoon, yet managed to reload. The second shot was a hit, causing the decompression snatcher to deflate and release Cynthia. The crippled decompression snatcher was ruthlessly dissected by crowd scavengers. Thankfully, Cynthia was alive, although her arm was bleeding. Minutes later, we were in the Typhon's sickbay. Koji prepped at his medical station. Cynthia, I am relieved that you have survived. However, since you have made physical contact with an alien, I need to run tests to detect if your bloodstream has been contaminated. You mean potential disease? I clenched my jaw. Since Europa's ecosystem is entirely alien to the human condition, there are bound to exist all sorts of biological agents that we cannot comprehend, Koji explained. Koji paused to clean a needle. Cynthia, this will hurt, yet it will prevent any inflammation. Despite Cynthia having a sore arm, all of Koji's tests were negative. After that near-death attack, it was relatively smooth sailing until we arrived at Puil. End of Part 2. Part 3. Red Alert. Cynthia's grogginess from the injection dissipated when the radar detected an immense object. The object was the bottom of the asteroid Puil, protruding out of the ice ceiling. I veered the Typhon toward the asteroid. An ear-piercing whirring sound emanated from the asteroid. The noise relayed an electrical signal to Cynthia's communication station. The submarine's lights flickered out, and all of the systems shut down. Koji bolted out of his seat to reactivate the generator. Red alert! Red alert! The emergency system repeated indifferently. The Typhon was dead, as its emergency lights flashed. After an eerie silence, the asteroid rumbled as a creature burst out of the rock. It was relatively small, only about 5 feet in length. It resembled a leech. This monster had 6 red arms, 2 eye stalks, and golden plates running down its dark body. The monster screeched as its eyes glowed with fury. From the depths, an 82-foot striped whip shark emerged. This alien was the open ocean's apex predator. The apex predator was striped like a tiger with a sore nose and powerful jaws, and a whip tail. The apex shark gave the Typhon no attention. Rather, it was drawn by the monster's siren call. The leech creature attached itself to the striped whip shark's head and burrowed into its brain. The striped shark violently jolted like a body being shot numerous times. Its body surrendered and turned towards the Typhon. Backup generator activated, the emergency system rang. The possessed striped whip shark whipped its tail into the Typhon. Cynthia took the submarine's reins and maneuvered it away from Puil. The possessed shark made a sharp turn and rammed its sword nose into the Typhon's hull. Water gushed into the submarine's corridors. I ran from my seat out of the cockpit into the hangar. I shouted, "Someone has to get Koji!" Hangar compartment damaged. Separation commencing, announced the emergency system. "Captain, it's too late!" Cynthia shouted. Once the system was activated, the cockpit door was immediately sealed. I was unable to help Koji, so I contacted him over the radio. "Koji, the cockpit sealed itself. You need to find an escape pod." Koji didn't reply. Over the Typhon security camera, I watched powerless. Koji sprinted down the hangar corridors to the generator room, which was flooded. Koji dove into the generator and pulled a lever that jump-started its systems. The striped whip shark rammed a second time into the Typhon. The alien's head crashed through a wall and was thrashing around inside the generator room. As Koji made it out of the generator room, the striped whip shark impaled the generator. The ensuing explosion resulted in the striped whip shark's death and the cockpit's immediate detachment. Koji limped to the Typhon's flooded vehicle hangar. Koji entered an escape pod and blasted out into the ocean. From the cockpit of the Typhon, I could see the escape pod fleeing from the sinking wreckage. Now in control of the cockpit, I veered toward the escape pod. "I survived!" Koji whooped over the radio. Relieved, Cynthia took a deep breath. I radioed in, "It's not over!" The carcass of the striped whip shark spilled with green blood as the monster burst out of its head. The monster no longer resembled a 5-foot leech. Instead, it was now a 21-foot serpent. It had golden spikes, terrible jaws, 2 bioluminescent lures, and 4 flippers adorning its tail. The monster coiled around Koji's escape pod, causing its hull to crumple and sink into the darkness. The monster targeted the Typhon. I pushed the accelerator on the Typhon and rammed into the monster. The terrible serpent fled into the abyss. Koji was gone, and I had failed my duties as captain. Koji will be remembered as an honorable astronaut and the respectable man he was. We will immediately cease this expedition and return to the surface with our operational systems. I can contact the ZSS to send us the shuttle wingset. The radio chimed in. Beep, beep, beep. I activated the radio system to hear Koji's voice. This is Koji. I'm still alive. Do you copy? Captain Jefferson here. Do you reply? Yes. I can hear you. Captain, unfortunately, the escape pod's thrusters and heating are inoperative. The only systems working are radio, oxygen, and distress beacon. I'm sending you my coordinates. Please find me quickly. I'm feeling the chills of the deep sea. Koji, we received your signal and are on our way. Don't worry and stay alive. I'll try, sir, Koji chuckled. Now aware of Koji's survival, the expedition had become a rescue operation. The Typhon descended into the oceanic abyss of Europa. Pursuing Koji's beacon, we delved deeper and deeper into the depths. On the other side of the Typhon's walls was an abyssal void utterly alien to the human experience. At a depth of 40 miles, Koji's signal sputtered. Signal lost! Signal lost! The emergency system was indifferent to our fears. Get Koji's signal back online, I ordered, as I slammed my hand on the console. We are receiving interference, Captain. We lost the signal. Cynthia scrambled over the controls. In the distance, a great glowing mass shone into view. It was the size of a small island. Across its surface was a beaming bioluminescence of green, red, blue, and purple. As the Typhon neared the great mass, I could distinguish its surface to have a rugged texture, jutting with spiral protrusions. Koji's escape pod may have landed on that glowing island. Cynthia landed the Typhon on the glowing mass. I'll go out on the exosuit, I stated. Captain, may I join you? You will need a co-pilot. I can set the Typhon on autopilot, Cynthia inquired. It would be my pleasure. I patted Cynthia on the shoulder. After a few minutes of preparation, Cynthia and I exited the Typhon to enter the exosuit. The exosuit had the name Goliath painted on its dual-seat cockpit. The Goliath was 15 feet tall and had hip thrusts for short bursts. Its legs had clamping feet, while the arms were equipped with a drill and movable digits. Once the Goliath landed on the island's illuminated surface, I began the machine's walk cycle. Cynthia took control of the scanners. She activated a radar system. The floating island's surface was inhabited by alien life forms. Crowdfish darted away from the Goliath. Europa jellyfish hovered above the island's towering spirals. What is this place made out of? Cynthia inquired. Using the Goliath's drill arm, I extracted a sample from a spiral. Upon close inspection, the rock-like substance that composed the island had tiny holes. Within each hole was a living polyp with purple roots and undulating green tentacles. This place is a colossal living reef, I answered. We must be in a hot spot for alien life, Cynthia replied tensely. We continued exploring the reef to discover an abundance of biodiversity. Resembling a flattened brown crowdfish was the allure-fish. With its numerous lures, the 14-foot hunter used its bioluminescence to prey on unfortunate creatures. Many of the aliens were in symbiosis with the reef. For example, the allure-fish warded off a polyp star, seeking to prey upon the polyps within the reef. That is the largest hermit crab I have ever witnessed. Cynthia caught my attention. Yes, indeed, I gulped. The hermit crab was what we called a crusher crab. The yellow crab housed a reef shell on its back. A leisurely glow eel was pulverized into green mush by the crusher crab's mallet appendages. I was about to speak when the Goliath was rammed into by a 29-foot-long eel. Inside the Goliath, the world flipped upside down. I slammed the thrusters into action, and the Goliath was quick enough for Cynthia to slice off the eel's tail with the drill. The ferocious alien undulated its flattened body to resemble a cobra. The cobra eel stared at us with its 3 eyes and shrieked. Whipping the Goliath's arm, I slammed the cobra eel into a polyp spiral. Dazed, the cobra eel fled. The cobra eel swam over a pair of eye stalks protruding from the reef's surface. The reef floor erupted apart as a colossal spiked mandibles devoured the cobra eel. The alien emerged, resembling a shrimp with a millipede body and a lobster tail. On its triangular head was a shorter eye stalk, while towards the tip were its mandibles and elongated eye stalks. This predator, the launcher worm, fully emerged its 64-foot-long body, encircling the Goliath. Rearing its head, the launcher worm grabbed the Goliath with its mandibles and swam upward. The red alert flared as Cynthia and I bounced in our seats. The launcher worm's mandibles squeezed the Goliath's metal, causing its visor to crack. Using the Goliath's drill, I chopped off one of the launcher worm's mandibles. The Goliath descended back to the surface of the reef. The determined launcher worm began to charge. With the Goliath, Cynthia and I hoisted a fallen polyp spiral and sharpened the tip. The launcher worm charged, only to be decapitated. I was speechless until Cynthia shouted in joy. Once we were back inside the Typhon, I had shaken off my shock. Cynthia punched me in the shoulder as we exited the Goliath. You are quite gung-ho for someone near the age of retirement. I still have some vigor left in me, I chuckled. Back in the Typhon, I took control of the cockpit. Cynthia repaired the Goliath, departing deeper into the depths. The floating island became a dim light, and by 50 miles it felt like a distant memory. At 55 miles deep, the beacon appeared on my console. Signal recovered, signal recovered. Koji Ryochi has been identified, blared the emergency system. I eagerly fumbled with the radio. Koji, can you hear me? We momentarily lost your signal. The other side crackled with static. Captain, I hear you, Koji gasped for air. It's freezing, and I'm almost out of oxygen. Koji, you need to hold on. We are only 5 miles from your position. Cynthia gritted her teeth. The spirits of my ancestors are reaching out to me. Koji groaned, dazed. End of Part 3. Part 4, The Ghost of Europa. Communications with Koji sputtered out, and we were dead silent. The signal to Koji's escape pod was still active, so we ventured on. While morale couldn't be lower, the slightest chance of Koji's survival kept us vigilant. The radar beeped. Ping, ping, ping. Captain, Koji's signal is zipping away. Cynthia was dumbfounded. How fast? I asked. I don't know. The signal is already off my radar, Cynthia replied. Perhaps Koji's ghost is real, I proposed. We have to continue our pursuit, I commanded. Regardless of what had taken Koji, we couldn't give up. The deeper we went, the voyage became more treacherous. Tracking Koji to his last recorded signal, the Typhon entered a volcanic zone. The water around us was boiling compared to the freezing temperatures near Europa's icy surface. The volcanic vents shot up from the rocky sea floor, like smoking chimneys. Around them were droves of thriving organisms. Burrowed into the vents were the vent eels. These cyclopsian eels were primarily sluggish, only absorbing nutrients. Crawling along the volcanic vents were 44-foot-long crabs. The furry vent crabs went from smoker to smoker, seeking out a cuisine of chemicals. Hovering above the vents were 16-foot-long lobsters. These vent feeder crabs darted in and out of smoke plumes, Cynthia caught my attention with a snap of her fingers. Captain Jefferson, I must inform you that the fumes from these hydrothermal vents will damage the Typhon's hull. We can handle a bit of heat, I insisted. Captain, I understand you're eager, yet there is a problem we cannot ignore. Due to the Typhon during incredibly cold temperatures and now immense heat, its exterior hull become brittle. The opposite extreme temperatures cause the metal to expand and contract, Cynthia rebuked. Very well, we'll change our position, I relented. I maneuvered the Typhon away from the volcanic seafloor into open waters. We were met by a swarm of innumerable glowies. From a distance, I could make out a shape, a sort of titanic blob not dissimilar to a whale. Once the creature neared, its form became distinguishable. At 183 feet, it was a colossal purple crowdfish. Its fins were tipped with aqua bioluminescence, and furry barbs extended from its sucker mouth. This gargantuan filterfish moved its massive bulk like an 18-wheeler and devoured the swarm of glowies into its gaping maw. Huh, well that's a fat fish, Cynthia shuddered. It is magnificent, I gasped. After engulfing a swarm of glowies, the gargantuan filterfish sized itself up against the Typhon. I am not ashamed to admit that the Typhon was only a minnow. For a moment, I was relieved from the stress of losing Koji. I was sprung back into action when the emergency system pinged. Signal received, message incoming. The emergency system alerted. This is Koji to the Typhon crew. Do you reply? Koji's voice had been rejuvenated. This is Captain Jefferson. We read you, Koji. Here are my coordinates. I'm counting on you, Captain. We have a mission to accomplish. Koji hung up on the radio. Did he cease communications? Cynthia raised her eyebrows. Yes, he did. At least we have his confirmed coordinates, I replied. After a short oceanic trek, the Typhon reached Koji's destination. Resting by a hydrothermal vent was Koji's escape pod. Cynthia gently lowered the Typhon's thrust as it descended to the seafloor of Europa. Inside the escape pod, the young astronaut clung to life. Upon recognizing us, Koji jumped up and pressed his face against the pod's window. I didn't mean to be rude. I am low on power. Thankfully, my friend was able to give me recharge, Koji announced over the radio. What friend? I asked. The ghost of Europa. The glass kraken. Koji replied as if it were common knowledge. I think Koji's gone bonkers, Cynthia whispered. Think again. I pointed above the escape pod. Drifting above was a translucent 108-foot alien. This creature was truly a glass kraken. It undulated its tentacles lined with spikes. Its body glowed an ethereal light blue as green patterns zapped across its body like neurons, making a cerebral connection. The glass kraken's eyes resembled triangular green spikes. He has no intention to harm any of us. Now please, I'd like to get out of this cramped space, Koji remarked casually. The glass kraken picked up Koji's escape pod and lined it up with the Typhon's exterior valve. Cynthia sprinted out of her seat in a matter of seconds. Cynthia brought Koji into the cockpit with her arm over her shoulders. Koji slumped down at his station and turned to the rest of us. Thank you for saving me. I was almost sure I'd be lost in the ocean. Koji expressed his gratitude. How did you meet that big guy? Cynthia gestured to the glass kraken. Koji accessed the escape pod's camera system through the Typhon's monitor and played a recording. In the recording, Koji was in a crumpled escape pod resting on the sea floor. His breath was a visible mist, and his skin was blue. The escape pod's lights flickered out. Koji slumped in the pod motionless until there was a metallic bang. The escape pod rolled on the sea floor. Not buckled in, Koji bounced around. When the rolling ceased, red bioluminescence illuminated his face. Hunting down Koji was a ravenous predator. The alien resembled a shark with red bioluminescent tendrils waving out of its dorsal fin and lower jaw. The creature walked on red stilts protruding down from its fins. Koji paused the recording. I'll make this quick. I named this alien a tripod char. That individual, I would say, was about 52 feet in length. Koji, unpause the recording. The video continued as the tripod char tested the escape pod's hull by nudging it. The predator peered through the escape pod's visor and extended its jaws. Before the visor was shattered, the tripod char was yanked away from the window. "Now we're getting to the good part," Koji exclaimed. The tentacle of the glass kraken wrapped around the tripod char. The feeble tripod char vainly squirmed in the kraken's embrace, as the kraken's embrace tightened. With an ear-piercing crunch, the tripod char was mangled. The glass kraken turned its attention from its opponent to Koji's escape pod. The radio in the escape pod chimed, and my voice queried Koji. In response to the radio chatter, the glass kraken retreated out of sight. After a brief conversation, the glass kraken returned into view. The kraken's tentacles reached out and grabbed Koji's escape pod. In the recording, Koji was dazed. "The spirit of my ancestors is reaching out to me." The escape pod's radio buzzed as it had lost connection with the Typhon. The glass kraken elevated the escape pod off the seafloor and peered into the window. Frost-bitten and frail, Koji was horrified at the sight of the alien kraken. The metal of the pod was scraped as the kraken tightened its grip. The glass kraken propelled itself with a momentous speed as it zipped through the abyss. Koji slammed back into his seat due to the acceleration. "How fast were you going?" Cynthia asked. "Faster than the Typhon's propulsion system would ever be capable of." Koji grinned. The glass kraken accelerated at a breakneck pace for a few minutes until abruptly ceasing. The kraken held the pod and stared at Koji. Koji stared back. From the inky darkness, glowies began to flicker one by one. An innumerable swarm of glowies revolved around Koji and the glass kraken. Enamored by the luminescence, Koji placed his hand on the window. In return, the glass kraken did the same with a tentacle. For a moment there was silence. Zap! A beam of electricity shot from the tentacle into Koji. The escape pod's power flickered, and the recording ended. "With all the electricity that entered your body, in an instant, you should have died." My eyes widened. To tell you the truth, it didn't hurt. From that moment on, I've been connected in a way with the glass kraken. I know his mind. We are shadows of each other. Koji was sincere. "Koji, you need a brain scan immediately." I placed my hand on Koji's shoulder. "My ghostly friend is impatient, so let's be quick," Koji remarked with a grin. I helped Koji out of his seat. Koji turned to the glass kraken and waved. Our jaws dropped. When the glass kraken waved back with a tentacle, I ushered Koji into the medical bay. While Koji had his brain scanned, Cynthia sat dumbfounded in silence as she watched the glass kraken patiently float. 5 minutes passed until I returned with Koji. Koji is completely healthy. The only unusual thing is the rate at which his neurons are establishing new connections. The pace is 7 times what we would expect in a human body, I informed Cynthia. "Well, my classmates always called me geeky back in elementary school," Koji laughed. "Do you know why the glass kraken saved you?" I asked. "I'm still not sure. All I know is that he wants us to follow him," Koji replied. "Then the voyage continues into the unexplored, and as of yet, the unexplained." "Cynthia, follow the kraken," I ordered. End of Part 4. Part 5. The Serpent of the Abyss. Koji gave a thumbs up as the glass kraken spread its tentacles and propelled away. Cynthia pushed the submarine's accelerator lever to max velocity. We pursued the glass kraken through Europa's depths, blindly trusting Koji. Perhaps we were going to get eaten by the sea beast, or something else inexplicable would occur. Yet in that moment, my unwavering curiosity drove me to discover what lies beyond. As we followed the glass kraken, the surrounding marine life disappeared as we went deeper. The warmth of the volcanic vents had been replaced with a deathly cold atmosphere. Around us was a wasteland devoid of life. "Welcome to the abyssal plain, the final frontier of Europa's depths," Koji announced. The wildlife I observed in the ultimate depths was infrequent and small. Koji went along narrating the aliens as if he were in a nature documentary. On the abyssal plain seafloor was a graveyard of carcasses. Doing the dirty work were scavenger crabs and cold star eels. They feasted on leftovers. Despite the unnerving sensation of encompassing death, Koji was bubbling with enthusiasm. "Now that's a weird one. Check out that beaker squid, Koji exclaimed. The beaker squid was truly perplexing in appearance. Its beak was half the size of its yellow body. The rest of the alien was a head with writhing tendrils. That thing is the definition of uncanny, Cynthia jested. Welcome to Europa, I dryly remarked. Among the decaying alien carcasses were the fragments of dead polyp reefs. Without any bioluminescent light, the husks were a yellowish white. Recycling the decrepit reefs was a carapace squid, which constructed individual shelters. I saw this process in action. The carapace squid resembles a purple ball with tentacles. It takes chunks of decayed polyps and uses a green gel to glue them into a shell. Once the shelter is complete, the carapace squid burrows itself into the seafloor sediment for extra security. The stalker char was the largest of the abyssal scavengers. Koji surmised they would be desirable to avoid them as soon as a pair of hunters illuminated the Typhon with their crimson flashlights. Without any protection, the Typhon was no better than a rusted toaster. The glass kraken flashed a blinding green light, which intimidated the stalker char pair. So is this ghost our ally, or are we going to be its appetizer? I inquired. The glass kraken is a living organism. It will aid us as long as we are cordial, Koji replied. So how about we don't initiate the wrath of a literal kraken? Cynthia suggested. Cynthia's eyes widened as she did not blink. Following her line of sight, I perceived what can only be described as a spectacle. There was a line of 32-foot-long black-finned eels swimming together for what could have stretched on for miles. Those are savage eels. The glass kraken views them as foul creatures. They are migrating to spawn at the volcanic vents. For now, we are safe, Koji reassured us. Upon closer inspection, I could understand the name. The savage eel has a jaw like a chainsaw. In action, they could grind flesh to a pulp. We continued following the glass kraken, which maneuvered down the line of migrating savage eels. Once we had passed the line of eels, we were met with a cloud of green mist. Mangled alien corpses floated within the cloud. This is murder. Koji was tense. From the cloud of blood appeared a wounded gargantuan filterfish. Chasing it from the cloud emerged the sea manipulator. Only now it had grown to astronomical proportions. The serpent had a golden serrated spines across its back and stomach. Golden plates scaled its tail. The head had a red flashlight, a beaked jaw, 6 arms, and 2 hypnotic lures. At 654 feet in length, it effortlessly coiled itself around the gargantuan filterfish and skewered its target. We need to retreat immediately, Koji alerted me. Cynthia violently turned the Typhon away from the sea manipulator. The glass kraken distracted the serpent with its bioluminescence, giving us time to flee. The kraken attempted to communicate with its foe. However, the sea manipulator was hell-bent on destruction and attempted to eat the glass kraken. Wisely, the glass kraken shot an illuminated green ink cloud and aided our escape. The sea manipulator is why we were brought here, so we could help vanquish the serpent. Koji realized. Right now, we're fleeing, not fighting, I yelled. Ha! We agree, Koji shouted. The sea manipulator chased the Typhon and the glass kraken throughout the abyssal plain. We maneuvered around the decaying aliens, vainly seeking cover, until we were over an expansive brine pool. Basking on the brine pool's surface were brine lizards. These aliens resembled 33-foot-long, 6-legged reptiles with paddle tails and red backplates. Cynthia, take shelter beneath the brine, I ordered. Cynthia submerged the Typhon in the brine pool. The sea manipulator ceased its chase at the edge of the pool. It let out a haunting shriek that sent a signal to Cynthia's communication station. The pores of the sea manipulator's body began to spew blood. From the serpent's flesh burst numerous 16-foot-long parasitic creatures. These parasites had flailing tendrils and skin swelling with sores. These creatures of the sea manipulator dived into the brine pool. Underneath the brine pool, visibility was 0. The lack of sight intensified the sound of the parasites as they possessed the brine lizards. Now a part of the Sea Manipulator's legion, the brine lizards used their red flashlights to search for the Typhon. After a thundering thud, the Typhon's red alert activated. Red alert! Red alert! An unknown object has collided with the submersible's hull, alerted the emergency system. A pack of 4 brine lizards bullied the Typhon to the pool's surface. Regaining visibility, Cynthia sent the Typhon dashing across the brine pool surface. We managed to outpace the brine lizards. After suffering multiple strikes, a shifty brine lizard managed to grab hold of the Typhon and pierce the hull. Alert! Hull has been breached. Flooding imminent, the emergency system wailed. I gave Cynthia full reign over piloting and ordered Koji to follow me. We rushed to the Typhon's medical bay, where the brine lizard's head was embedded. In uncontrollable rage, the alien's head trashed the medical equipment. I ordered Koji to seal off the medical bay's doors, while I entered the captain's code into the console. Once I completed the code, the med bay detached from the Typhon and blasted away the invading brine lizard. Koji and I rushed back to the cockpit. Cynthia had piloted the Typhon past the brine pool and toward the line of migrating savage eels. No longer viewing the Typhon as its primary target, the Sea Manipulator commanded its parasites to infect the savage eels. With a screech, the parasites shot a stream of spores from their trunks. Chaos sprang among the savage eels as they broke formation. Once ingesting the spores, the savage eels became docile. The Sea Manipulator flashed its lures, causing the savage eels to assemble militant ranks in front of their new master. The pride of the serpent offered enough of a distraction to allow us to escape. Save from the deathly grip of the abyssal plain, the Typhon returned to the volcanic vents. While the rest of the crew regained composure, Cynthia was scrambling over her communications station. Ear-piercing beeps and chirps rang out and became distorted. I just realized something! Cynthia was frantic. The sounds emanating from the communications station continued to distort until they created a familiar shriek. There was a moment of dreadful silence among the crew. That's the Sea Manipulator, Koji spoke in a near whisper. That's because it is. The Typhon's communication system detected radio frequencies from the Sea Manipulator during both attacks at Puil and the Abyssal Plain, Cynthia replied. I'm not following, I started. I was analyzing the signal to figure out how the monster uses sound. What I discovered is that the Sea Manipulator's vocalizations function as audio communication. The vocalizations function by emitting a hypnotic radio frequency. The radio signal simultaneously works as a beacon. That's why we detected it at Puil. I hypothesize that the Sea Manipulator is signaling directly to the Puil asteroid to receive a sort of activation code, Cynthia elaborated. So, long story short, the Sea Manipulator established a connection with Puil, akin to a smartphone and an internet router, I added. Precisely, Cynthia eagerly shouted. If we are to defeat the Sea Manipulator, then we must disconnect the internet. Cynthia, set your coordinates to Puil, I ordered. Cynthia took the rein of the Typhon and began our ascension from the seafloor. As we accelerated from the volcanic vents, the light of the lava faded into the darkness. After a boring joyride in the void, we reached our destination. Our voyage to Puil took us back to the underside of Europa's icy shell. The ice was perfectly smooth until uneven cracks emerged. Trailing these jagged cracks took us to the source, the remaining rocky chunk of Puil. I stood up out of my captain's chair to address my crewmates. Our current mission is to destroy the Puil asteroid. I'll pilot the Goliath and use its drills to insert explosives into the asteroid, I announced. Captain, we don't have explosives, Cynthia rubbed her head. I'll use the spare batteries from the Typhon's auxiliary backup engines, I replied. Captain, if we disable our auxiliary backup engines, then we will have no means of escape. If our generator fails, while I agree with you, this decision is a major risk. Cynthia was on edge. The Sea Manipulator is an invasive species that will cause an extinction event. As scientists and explorers, we must preserve what we study. In this case, that would be the ecosystem of Europa, I rebutted. I understand. And if my hypothesis is correct, then severing the connection at Puil should turn the Sea Manipulator into a vegetable, Cynthia added. Cynthia, get the Goliath an arm's length near the asteroid. Koji, I'm going to need a co-pilot in the Goliath, I commanded. We should collect a physical specimen from Puyo before we demolish it into dust, Koji added. Once Cynthia had maneuvered the Typhon's rear near the asteroid, Koji and I were prepared inside the Goliath. The Goliath detached from the Typhon as its clamps unlocked. With a mechanical limb, I grabbed hold of Puyo's rocky surface. Koji positioned the Goliath's drill's arm and began drilling. The drill arm churned rock into dust until there was a metallic clang. The drill screeched against a metallic gold surface. Koji faced me, eyes wide. Puyo is not an asteroid. We're less alone than we previously imagined. Koji was terrified. I was at a loss for words, knowing that we were not the only visitors to Europa. The metallic gold surface of Puyo shimmered. An ear-piercing hum emanated from Puyo. Not again, Koji. Brace yourself, I shouted. A wave of golden plasma hurled the Goliath into the depths. As we plunged through the water, spinning, I became nervous. I reached for the joystick and shifted my wrist to regain my equilibrium. Once we were right side up, I could see the underside of Europa's icy surface. Steadily, cracks jetted throughout the ice. Once the cracks ceased their conquest, chunks of ice descended upon us. The first block of ice steadily sank. The second block of ice collided with the drill arm, severing the mechanism. More and more ice chunks collapsed from the ceiling. Colossal and tiny, the ice became underwater hail. We won't be able to survive this, Captain. Where can we find shelter? Koji asked. We'll use all of our thrust to take cover inside Europa's ice layer, I replied. Koji and I each took hold of the Goliath's joysticks. Using all of our might, we pushed the Goliath, held up to the ice ceiling as its thrusters sputtered. Another chunk of ice slammed into the Goliath. Regaining balance once again, we were caught in a cycle of gaining elevation, only to be struck down. The metallic surface of Puyo shimmered a golden hue. The hail froze in place. Amid the pause of chaos, the Typhon was in view. I activated my radio, praying the crew had not suffered harm. Cynthia, report. This is Captain Jefferson. Koji and I are alive, I clutched the radio. Captain Jefferson, I'm alive and well. I'm moving the Typhon in for retrieval, Cynthia replied over the radio. Wait, Captain, why would Puyo stop the ice fall? Koji began to breathe rapidly. Out of the corner of my eye was Koji's answer. A savage eel rammed into the Goliath. The electrical system flickered and jolted back online. The savage eel circled back for a second time with heightened senses. Koji took control of the Goliath's remaining arm and slapped the savage eel. Floating like a corpse, the savage eel violently twitched as green blood spewed from its mouth. A parasite crawled out of the eel's jaws and shot spores from its trunk. Ineffective against machines, the parasite's spores splattered on my cockpit window. Koji used the Goliath's fingers to squish the parasite into pulp. This blocked out more of my visibility. Koji, I am blinded by debris. Do you have a visual? I asked in distress. Captain, I see a nightmare. The sea manipulator's legion has arrived, Koji replied. From the depths emerged the migrating force of the savage eels. They had all become slaves to the sea manipulator. The legion of savage eels swarmed from the abyss, all with eyes on us. Beams of green light broke through the muck on my window, as an impenetrable wall of glowies had sheltered the Goliath from the ravenous eels. Among our saviors was the glass kraken, which wrapped its tentacles around the Goliath and carried us to the Typhon. I reattached the battered exosuit to the submarine. Raising a tentacle, the glass kraken pointed to an opening within the ice. If we follow that route, we will inevitably face many dangers. This is undoubtedly the path to saving Europa, Koji stated amid a psychic link with the glass kraken. Koji and I exited the Goliath and sprinted to the Typhon's cockpit. Reunited with Cynthia, I was quick to give orders. Cynthia, take the Typhon into that hole in the ice. The rest of us will get geared up for terrestrial escapades, I ordered. Koji piloted the Typhon into the entrance through the ice. Inside the Typhon's hull, I hoisted a harpoon gun and implored the crew to take arms. The interior of the Typhon shook as it breached the surface of the water. Now we had entered Europa's inner ice. The entire crew of the Typhon, Koji, Cynthia, and I, were armed with harpoon guns. Climbing the hangar's ladder, I unsealed the top exit valve and stepped onto the Typhon's roof. I was joined by the crew, and together we marveled at the interior layer of Europa's ice. The ice expanded into a cavern with towering walls thousands of feet high. The ice itself was perfectly smooth and dusted with the odd reddish-brown mineral. I turned to Koji and gestured into the distance. "Now we follow your lead," I insisted. End of Part 5. Part 6. The World Within Ice. One by one, each member of the crew leaped off the Typhon's roof. As each of our boots landed on the ice, the reddish-brown mineral dust was kicked into the air. Following Koji as our guide, we began our trek in search of Puil. Koji seemed to be in and out of a psychic trance as we marched across the ice. Koji knew the biome of the inner ice like the back of his hand. He never halted to determine direction. Throughout our trek, the ice varied in form, as there were solid compound blocks along with translucent ice, which reflected light. To perhaps no one's surprise at this point, there was life within the ice. Wallowing in dust buildup of the reddish-brown mineral was the red lizard. These aliens are related to the brine lizard, although they are only 8 feet in length. These sluggish creatures are red and white, with a stubby tail and buck teeth. Koji, do you have a hypothesis regarding how alien life made its way inside Europa's ice layer? Cynthia revealed her curiosity. My theory is that since natural events, such as Jupiter's gravitational pull, strain the ice, causing cracks, this would create openings. Aliens would take advantage of the ice as shelter, and subsequently adapt to their new surroundings. Koji elaborated enthusiastically. Even though Koji had a mystical link with the Kraken ghost, he's still the same rambling biology geek. Cynthia was amused. There is nothing wrong with expressing a scientific intellect, I advocated. As we followed Koji through an ice tunnel, we had a view of the ice interior. To my amazement, within the ice were 4-foot-long aliens with yellow armor and blue bioluminescence. These aliens were burrowing inside the ice and consuming the reddish-brown mineral. Koji called these aliens ice lice and explained that they were harmless scavengers. Despite their harmless nature, Cynthia was not satisfied. "Look at these things! I don't like their antennae. Something strikes me the wrong way with those antennae protruding from their rear. They look like earwigs in the ice." Cynthia was revolted at the sight of the ice lice. The ice lice shouldn't be dangerous. However, I would be cautious of that. Koji pointed to an alien standing on the other side of the tunnel. This alien resembled a lobster with bulky mallet forearms, flesh-shearing mandibles, 4 eye stalks, and a crab claw protruding from its back. Koji put his hand out in front of me. I lowered my harpoon gun, even though I doubted Koji's sanity. "That gorilla lobster is only defending its territory. I will handle this," Koji reassured me. The gorilla lobster raised its back claw and snapped it repeatedly. Snap, snap, snap. The sound vibrated like a gong. Cynthia and I clenched our ears, while Koji stood sternly. Koji stomped his foot 3 times and clapped his hands once. In retaliation, the gorilla lobster reared on its hind stilt legs and thudded its mallet forearms into the ice. The resulting shockwave quaked the ice and caused all of us to topple. Hitting the solid ice felt like punching a tree. We weren't the only ones irritated by the gorilla lobster. Within the ice, all of the ice lice illuminated in unison and burrowed in the same direction. The ice lice burst out of the ice, and a swarm of them piled on top of the gorilla lobster. They covered it from head to back claw. Being devoured alive, the gorilla lobster struggled for a few seconds to break free. It collapsed to the cold embrace of the ice. "Let's find another route." Koji led us out of the ice tunnel. Uncovering a new pathway, Koji took Cynthia and me into a second ice tunnel that lacked any alien residence. Exiting the tunnel, we entered another spacious ice cavern. This one did not have a ceiling. Through the open roof, the stars beamed in the distance. Yet, they were obscured by the face of Zeus. Jupiter functions as a sun in its mini system, consisting of nearly 80 moons and a dim asteroid belt. It is invigorating to ponder how there are so many wonders in only a single planet's orbit, such as Jupiter. The majesty within our solar system and beyond is incomprehensible to the human mind. Koji, how do you know so much about Europa's aliens and are quick with naming them? I asked. Admittedly, I've always been good at identifying organisms. Yet since I've united with the Glass Kraken's intelligence, it's been instinctively flowing information into my mind, Koji replied, somewhat intrigued himself. I hope you don't mind if I put that to the test, Cynthia challenged Koji. Cynthia pointed to a six-legged lizard the size of a human. This alien had counter shading of green and blue along with a red horn. The alien kicked up reddish dust as it bolted across the ice. Koji chuckled, took a breath, and began. Meet the ice skidder. It is a shy creature from the crowdfish lineage. Its padded feet allow it to scale across the ice walls like a gecko on Earth. The thin paddles on their tail are uniquely distinct between each individual. If you're curious, Cynthia, they made by... Koji was cut off by Cynthia punching him in the shoulder. Ha! You win, Koji. I'll admit, you've proved your point. Cynthia was satisfied. The ice skidder chittered a low guttural call and was joined by two others of its kind. The two new ice skidders were bucks and butted horns. The rival males circled each other, barking. The smaller male lunged at the larger male. They wrestled into the ice. The loser fled, and the victorious male courted the female. Well, you're about to be educated on how the ice skidders mate. We might want to keep moving on. Koji widened his eyes with a grin. Cynthia exaggerated an eye roll. Koji marched on as we followed his lead. At the end of the ice cave, we were met with a towering 200-foot wall of ice. Koji looked up, and I instantly knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. We need to scale this wall if we are to reach Puil, Koji announced. That climb will not be safe based on the equipment we have, I rebuked. Don't forget, we have climbing hooks. Cynthia pressed a button on her wrist, allowing metal blades to eject from her spacesuit. On Mars, I learned how to be an expert rock climber. Remember, I was the first human to scale Olympus Mons, the largest volcano on Mars. I would advise all of you to follow my lead. I gloated. How long was the climb to the peak of Olympus Mons? Cynthia queried. An agonizing 6 months, I groaned. We prepared our suits to scale the ice wall. At about 50 feet high, I was huffing and puffing. Admittedly, I hadn't performed a feat such as this since the early 2090s. My focus was broken by Cynthia's shouting. Look to your left! Massive target incoming! Cynthia yelled. That's an ice pick. The apex predator! Koji geeked out. The ice pick, as Koji called it, was a 34-foot-long lobster whose forearms were massive spears. It climbed by impaling the ice. This alien had 5 eyes, shielded by a brow plate and flickering mandibles. Hoist your spear gun and aim for its limbs, I commanded. The ice pick gained pace and singled me out. With my harpoon gun, I shot a bolt right into its right leg. Cynthia fired her harpoon gun. A bolt struck the alien in the side of its neck. Its armor was too sturdy for the bolts to draw blood or cause any significant injury. Continuing the climb, I had scaled 100 feet by the time Cynthia had reached the top. Koji was still ahead of me by 30 feet. I'm getting too old for this, I lamented. Aim for the eyes. There's an opening between its head plate, Koji advised. At the top of the ice wall, Cynthia fired at the ice pick. The ice pick ducked its head inward, shielding itself from the projectiles. By the time I had scaled up to 170 feet, Koji already made it to the top. Close behind me was the ice pick, which rattled its mandibles. Taking my next step up, I slipped as my metal pick scraped the ice. I had inserted my ice pick into the wall, only to be stared down by the vicious predator. The ice pick chittered voraciously. Its eyes shimmered as if it were licking its non-existent lips. Looking down at me, The ice pick's head was directly above me. As it prepared to strike for a bite, I shot my harpoon gun. The harpoon crumpled the ice pick's eye stalks, causing it to lose balance. The ice pick lifted its front legs out of the ice wall. It plummeted to the cavern floor, where it became crab stew. Catching my breath, I climbed the rest of the ice wall, hardly believing what I'd accomplish. When I reached the top, Cynthia reached out her hand. Cynthia hoisted me up with the help of Koji. Now that we were all reunited, I could take a decent breath. Joyous to see you among the living, Cynthia smiled. Congratulations to the captain for slaying the mighty beast. Koji shook my shoulder. Now that we had reached the ice wall's peak, all that lay ahead was our final destination. Within this final ice cavern was Puil, half covered in a rocky exterior with its golden interior, partially exposed. My fellow astronauts were ready for whatever threat we would face. Koji saluted me. From here on out, we follow Captain Jefferson's lead, Koji announced. I stepped in front of my fellow astronauts and observed the cavern ahead. After battling the ice pick, we only had 8 of our 15 harpoons we brought. Keep your harpoons on standby. We have no idea what might lurk inside Puil, I ordered. In a single fashion line, the crew followed my lead as we neared Puil. Marching across the ice, everything and everyone was silent. Our boots thudded on the ice in unison with every step. In a synchronized movement, we marched toward the alien asteroid. I treaded closer toward Puil. 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps. My left boot slipped on the ice until I planted my right foot and regained stability. 2 steps and 1 final step. Running my hand across the asteroid, I felt the surface. Puil's rocky shell was rugged. With a clang, my glove slid off the rock. The exposed golden interior of the asteroid was smooth and heated. The gold surface feels like a cup of hot chocolate, I stated. Koji walked up beside me with an outstretched arm and laid his fingers upon the gold. His glove sizzled as smoke steamed from Puil's surface. A shock of pain jolted through my arm. I yanked my hand off the surface and shoved Koji away. Puil's gold burned into an iridescent red. The rocky surface of the remnant asteroid melted into a molten sludge. With the asteroid's shell evaporated, the surface of Puil was wholly revealed. A golden sphere, smoothed to perfection. The crimson glow burning Puil's surface formed hexagons that engulfed its surface. The hexagonal pattern beamed intensely. With a flash, crimson light coated the ice cavern. Following the flash was a metallic ear-bleeding shriek that replicated the sea manipulator's vocals. Shouting in torment, all of us clenched our ears. Koji fell to his knees as his eyes shone an alien green. "Make it stop, please!" Koji yelled in agony. End of Part 6. Part 7. The Secrets of Puil. Hoisting my harpoon gun, I shot a bolt at the sphere. Upon impact, the bolt melted into a liquid sludge. My eyes were full of tears. I dropped to the ground. The cavern of ice quaked as the crimson light dimmed and the screeching ceased. "It's over," Koji choked back tears. Laying on the ground, I huffed to stand up straight. Once I had gained my balance, I grabbed the harpoon gun. Cynthia examined Koji and guided him up to his feet. Koji's eyes were back to their human appearance. Cynthia raised her harpoon gun at me and pulled the trigger. "Wait, Cynthia!" I shouted, appalled. The bolt zipped past my shoulder, causing a creature to roar out in pain. Behind me was a 14-foot-long alien, a 6-legged predator with red skin and icy plates shielding its back. The alien had a harpoon in its front right shoulder. Gnawing its toothy jaws, the alien howled for reinforcements. "Ice Sleeper! They hunt in packs. Note their respirator pores," Koji wheezed. "Those things are above us!" Cynthia raised her head. On the ice cavern's roof, the Ice Sleeper's reinforcements had arrived. 4 individuals in total scaled the roof, using their talons to grip the ice. Raising my harpoon gun, I aimed for the wounded Ice Sleeper. Watery mist aired from spongy orifices in their neck. In a split second, the bolt impaled the ice sleeper's neck. The slain alien collapsed onto the ice. Enraged, its fellow packmates howled a war cry. As a group, we have 5 harpoons remaining. Mind your aim, I commanded. The 4 ice sleepers dropped from the cavern ceilings. Cynthia fired a harpoon, impaling the stomach of an ice sleeper, killing it amid descent. 4 harpoons left, I yelled. The remaining 3 ice sleepers spread their talons and landed on the cavern floor, akin to felines. These aliens are unfazed by falling. Among the 3 ice sleepers, the center one snarled in order. As the aliens charged in unison, I fired a harpoon bolt, which was deflected by the left ice sleeper's back plates. 3 left, I shouted. The ice sleeper to the right sprang around Koji, mining his flank. He shot off a harpoon. The bolt's tip and end stuck out of the ice sleeper's neck. Green blood oozed from its spongy respirator. Direct hit. 2 to go, Koji rallied. 2 harpoons or 2 aliens? Cynthia was frantic. Koji and Cynthia in unison raised their harpoon guns and fired at the ice sleeper to the left. Upon impact, the ice sleeper's skull was skewered. 1 ice sleeper to go and 0 harpoons, I shouted in dismay. Koji howled a battle-hardened warrior's cry. He held his harpoon gun from its stock and dashed past me. The central ice sleeper kept pace and was head-to-head with Koji. Swinging his makeshift club, Koji battered the alien's head. Quick to his feet, the ice sleeper shifted its abdomen and tripped Koji with its tail. Koji toppled onto his back as the alien snapped the harpoon gun in half. Koji stared into the alien's jaws, certain of death. Koji, no! Cynthia cried. Cynthia slammed into the ice sleeper, only to bounce off. While unfazed, it was distracted long enough for Koji to scramble away. Cynthia grabbed the ice sleeper's legs and climbed onto its back. Using the alien's ice plates as handles, she held on for dear life as the creature bolted across the ice. Bring it over here, I yelled to Cynthia. Using my harpoon gun as a club, I pounded one of the ice pillars supporting the cavern's ceiling. Koji joined my effort, while Cynthia steered the beast towards us. Clang, clang, the pillar cracked. Halfway there, Cynthia notified us. All at once, I rallied. Smash! Our harpoon guns collapsed, the pillar's foundation. The pillar toppled in the direction of the ice sleeper, taking a chunk of the ceiling with it. Run! Cynthia yelled. Without breath or strength, I managed to clear the ice fall. Cynthia leaped off of the ice sleeper, milliseconds before the alien was flattened. The debris cleared, and what remained of the ice sleeper was a squashed corpse. Its green blood stained the reddish-brown ice. Regathered with the group, we can now focus our attention on Puil. Was anyone injured? Cynthia inquired. All seems good, I responded. Now that Puil is a golden ball of death, how will we destroy it? Cynthia questioned. Koji tapped his foot and paced a few steps. He sprang to attention. Perhaps we could use a genetic signature to access Puil's interior, Koji pondered. I'm not following, I admitted. Puil is not an asteroid. That was only a disguise. Instead, I'm positive that Puil is a spacecraft. Like any car, it must have a lock to get inside. When we placed our hands on the gold, aka its doors, it did not accept our keys, Koji elaborated. Since the sea manipulator originated from Puil, that means its genetic material would unlock Puil, Cynthia summarized. Exactly, and I know where we can find a genetic sample. A solution had sparked into Koji's mind. Koji sprinted over to the corpse of an ice sleeper. Pumping his fists, Koji squeezed his fingers as if preparing for a boxing match. He psyched himself up. Kneeling, he pried open the deceased ice sleeper's jaws. If you're squeamish, look away. Koji inhaled deeply. Extending his right arm down the alien's esophagus, Koji tightened his grip. Yanked from his right arm, Koji fell to the ice. He began an arm wrestle with an invisible adversary. Yep, it's there. I gotta yank it out, Koji strained. Using his left arm to grab his right arm, Koji used all his might. Falling on his back, Koji had pulled out his opponent, one of the sea manipulator's parasites. Wrestling the parasite, it coiled its trunk around Koji's neck. Gasping for air, Koji's face turned a bruised purple color. The tip of the trunk veered towards Koji's face. "The parasite is going to release its spores," Koji gasped. Cynthia and I rushed over to Koji and grabbed the parasite's trunk. Only with our combined strength did we manage to unwrap the trunk from Koji's neck. "Bring the parasite to the golden sphere," Koji frantically ordered. The three of us carried the writhing parasite to Puil, while Cynthia and I held back the parasite's body. Koji grabbed the trunk and punched the parasite in between its eyes. "Throw the parasite onto Puil," Koji commanded. Koji nodded his head, and all at once, we shoved the parasite onto the golden sphere. The parasite's body was melted into a yellow slime. Its fluids were absorbed by the surface of Puil. The sphere flashed a crimson glow 3 times. Following the third flash, the sphere's hexagons parted as the spacecraft opened up. The hexagons rearranged themselves so that with the sphere reformed, there was a 12-foot-tall entrance. This opening led to the interior of the spacecraft. "Does anyone want to go in first?" Koji spread out his hands. "Well, I've always wondered the truth about UFOs." "Everyone, follow me," I accepted. "I have the spare batteries from the Typhon in my backpack. Cynthia, I hope that you can re-engineer them into explosives," I proposed. "Do you have any doubts I can't?" Cynthia raised her eyebrows. As the crew closely followed me from behind, we stepped one by one inside the sphere. There was a dim crimson light inside. The air was stale by a few million years. An aroma of death and rusted metal tinged the air. Continuing inside the spacecraft, I entered the ship's control center, where a red plasma core shaped like an hourglass hovered inside rotating rings. Surrounding the plasma hourglass were 4 cylindrical glass chambers. The chamber's glass was rusted over, concealing their contents. I wonder what could be inside these chambers. I placed my hand on a chamber, staring into its clouded tomb. "Here's the pursuit of discovery," Cynthia spurred. Using her harpoon gun as a blunt object, Cynthia shattered the chamber. From the shattered glass, an alien corpse fell on the hexagonal floor. The stale air had been filled with the scent of burnt flesh. The alien body had rotted beyond recognition. However, I could make out 3 arms, 2 extending from its shoulder and a third attached to its spine. What remained of the skull had tusks. That must be one of Puil's pilots. "Cynthia, I do not want to see the others." I was bewildered. "Everyone over here! I found something!" Koji drew our attention. Further into the spaceship, Koji had found what could be equated to a laboratory. I went into the lab. Cynthia stayed in the control center. Mechanical arms dangled from the ceiling. In the center of the lab was a control console that formed a 360-degree ring. Lining the lab's walls were test tubes, each the size of a human. Koji walked up to a tube and wiped off the soot. Covering the glass, Koji sprinted across the laboratory, clearing the soot off each tube. In total, there were 9 tubes in the lab. "Koji, what are you doing?" I noticed he was frantic. "Captain, there are more of them. An army of serpents!" Koji was overwhelmed. Inside each of the 9 tubes were housed first-stage sea manipulators, 5 feet in length, resembling leeches with golden plates, 6 red arms, and eye stalks. While their purpose was unknown, it was undeniable that the creator of Puil had developed the sea manipulator and its kin. I can only speculate what methods engineering could create those monstrosities. "We cannot allow any of those serpents to be unleashed. They are an invasion force and will decimate all life on Europa." "Help! Help!" Cynthia screamed at the top of her lungs. Along with the crew, we rushed out of the lab back to the control center. Cynthia had dropped her makeshift bomb and was being dragged away by the alien pilot. From the red plasma hourglass, beams of energy reanimated the pilot's corpse. The pilot's flesh was reconstructed with golden fibers. Koji and I tackled the reanimated pilot, freeing Cynthia from its grasp. The reanimated pilot punched Koji's head. The force sent Koji flying outside of the ship. He lay unconscious on the ice. "Cynthia, get out of here," I ordered. I finished the bomb, threw it into the energy core. Cynthia hurled the explosive at me. Cynthia fled outside. I grabbed the reanimated pilot by its back arm, which it used to clamp down on my skull. My hearing was muffled as my head throbbed. I was spared from having my head cracked open as it threw me to the floor. Gold blood drizzled from the alien pilot's decaying head. The alien pilot hobbled to the sphere's door, placing its hand on a hexagonal console. The alien pilot's hand sizzled. The entrance began to close as the sphere's hexagons rearranged themselves. I picked up a makeshift bomb and threw it into the plasma hourglass. I proceeded to hurl myself out of the spaceship before the entrance was sealed. The explosion happened within the blink of an eye. In silence, Puyo's golden sphere and its pilot flaked into golden ash. The ash floated through the cavern. Light and sound faded into an indistinguishable blur as my heart slowed. End of Part 7. Part 8. Leviathan. Captain, are you okay? Cynthia shook my shoulder. Cynthia shook me, and I regained consciousness. Koji applied pressure to his bleeding head. It's time to go home, Cynthia whispered into my ear. Consumed by shock, I was paralyzed on the ice. The smoky air stung my eyes. Wiping my eyes, I stared into the ice. It was a soft blue tinted with the ever-mystifying reddish-brown dust. A tear ran down my cheek and dripped from my nose into the ice. The teardrop splashed onto the ice. It pooled up the reddish-brown dust before assimilating into the surface. Cynthia patted me on the shoulder. She hoisted me to my feet. Thank you, I said, stabilizing my labored breath. In service to my captain, Cynthia had a tranquil smile. I'm not so sure if we won. Koji stared off into the distance. Captain Jefferson, we need to begin our journey back to the Typhon. Let's see if we can scavenge any equipment to help us scale down the ice caverns, Cynthia advised. Something isn't right. Koji spun around, observing our surroundings. The cavern floor! Cynthia was alarmed. The floor of the ice cavern was cracking, having been disrupted by Puyo's destruction. I began the charge, leading the crew across the ice. Sprinting across the ice felt like a jog with a sprained ankle. Slipping across the ice was hard enough, not to mention the quakes caused by the floor collapsing. Cracks jetted across the cavern until it fractured. Hold your breath, I commanded. The ice floor shattered as we plunged into Europa's ocean. I attempted to swim upward, yet I sank. The cavern was flooded. Diving into the depths, the water was drenched in green blood and dismembered savage eels. From a pool of blood, ravenous savage eels seized a masked organism. Golden blades rose from the pool and sliced the savage eel in half. 2 more of the voracious aliens fled from the pool. The bloodied head of the sea manipulator emerged. The monster had been scarred as golden blood spewed from its wounds. All that remained of its left eye was a hollowed-out socket. The bioluminescence of the serpent flickered like a broken light bulb. I swallowed water and nearly blacked out. My attention was caught by a green glow. Koji's eyes were a beacon that emitted a green bioluminescence. Behind Koji, the glass kraken ascended from the depths with a typhon wrapped in its tentacles. Koji, Cynthia, and I swam toward our submarine. We entered through a port. I limped to the captain's chair while Cynthia piloted. Get us out of here, I ordered sternly. Wait, how is the sea manipulator still alive? Cynthia asked. The destruction of Puyo disabled the sea manipulator's telepathic connection, so its army was set free. However, the sea manipulator itself has evolved beyond Puyo, Koji answered. You mean we still have to kill that monster? I was bewildered. No. The rest of you have done your part. It's time for me to depart. Koji stood up. Koji's eyes pulsated an extraterrestrial green glow. He gave a smile and shook my hand. Cynthia grabbed Koji's wrist and yanked him. Whatever you are going to do is not worth sacrificing your life. Cynthia squeezed his hand. This will not be my death. I have to fulfill my promise to Europa. Koji was at peace. He took Cynthia's hand and squeezed it. I promise that what you're about to see will be better than any kaiju movie on the moon, Koji affirmed. Koji, live for us. Cynthia let go of Koji's hand. Koji was tearing up as green luminescent droplets ran down his cheek. He stepped out of the Typhon's cockpit and sealed the valve. The port doors of the Typhon opened and Koji swam in front of the cockpit. Gazing into the window, Koji gave a wave and turned to face the approaching monstrosity. The sea manipulator, more dead than alive, hurled its decaying mass towards Koji. From the darkness of Europa's depths, a vast swarm of glowies encircled Koji. The glowies formed around Koji and morphed into the shape of a saurian. The glass kraken hovered above the saurian's silhouette as electricity sparked from its tentacles. The lightning bolts of Zeus blasted from the glass kraken onto the unison of Koji and glowies. I was blinded by the light. Upon regaining sight, I was in the presence of a true colossus. This leviathan was built like a lizard, only a monumental 627 feet in length. Its green body had orange stripes. Its red sail extended from the back of its head to the tip of its tail, forming a paddle. This creature is the greater Leviathan, and he is what Koji has become. The glass kraken was dwarfed by its creation and gave a friendly wave to the greater Leviathan. It's like a kaiju from one of Koji's movies. Cynthia was astonished. Koji, you will never cease to amaze, I whispered. The greater Leviathan turned its bulky head to observe the Typhon. The sea manipulator attempted to screech, yet its vocal cords had been torn out. The greater Leviathan roared at its opponent with a cry mightier than an elephant and fiercer than a lion. The titans clashed as the serpent coiled around the Leviathan. The greater Leviathan slashed the serpent's flesh with its claws. The tip of the sea manipulator's tail was severed by Leviathan's jaws and sank into the depths. The sea manipulator evaded a second chomp from the greater Leviathan and coiled around him. Using the golden spikes lining its serpentine body, the sea manipulator lacerated the Leviathan's flesh. The greater Leviathan broke free from its entanglements by using its forearms and jaws. The sea manipulator retreated and pursued the Typhon. Captain, the sea manipulator is approaching head-on, Cynthia alerted me. Take the Typhon up through the Puel crater to the surface of Europa, I ordered. Cynthia pushed the Typhon's thrusters to max. In a rampage, the sea manipulator desired a few more deaths. The Typhon kept ahead of the serpent and veered up into the pathway of the crater. The sea manipulator pursued us into the crater with the greater Leviathan not far behind. As the Typhon accelerated higher and higher, the sea manipulator unhinged its jaws to devour us. Shielding us from the assault was the greater Leviathan, who sacrificed his right arm, which was severed. Roaring in agony, the greater Leviathan chomped down on the sea manipulator's neck. The serpent wrestled itself out of the Leviathan's jaws and spun around us. Faster and faster, the sea manipulator encircled us as it churned water. Harnessing a whirlpool, the serpent ensnared the Typhon and the greater Leviathan. I've lost control of the engines. The Typhon is in free fall, Cynthia yelled, agitated. The Typhon's lights flickered out as its generators whined to a halt. The greater Leviathan continued to grapple with the sea manipulator as the whirlpool ascended. We rapidly traversed the 14-mile crater in a matter of minutes. Along the ride up, the Typhon spun around the dueling beasts. Claws, jaws, tail, spikes, teeth, and blood collided. Starlight shone into the crater. Reaching the surface of Europa away from the whirlpool sent the Typhon crashing onto Europa's surface. From the whirlpool erupted the two titans, battling to the death. The greater Leviathan heaved himself out of the crater. As the sea manipulator lunged out of the crater, it was tail-whipped by the Leviathan. Collapsing on the ice, the squirming sea manipulator was pinned down. The greater Leviathan chomped down on the sea manipulator's neck. With a bone-shattering crunch, the greater Leviathan beheaded the sea manipulator. The serpent's corpse was cast down into the depths of the crater. Examining his friends inside the Typhon, the greater Leviathan reared up on its hind legs. Raising his neck, the greater Leviathan unleashed a triumphant roar of victory. That was Awesome, I rejoiced. Koji, you are spectacular, Cynthia cheered. Let's get outside on top of the Typhon, I cheered. Cynthia and I exited the Typhon's cockpit and climbed on top of the submarine. The greater Leviathan dropped down on all fours, quaking the ice. He approached the Typhon. The greater Leviathan's massive head was only a few feet away from us. I gazed into the Leviathan's eyes, which contained the soul of Koji. Thank you, Koji. I placed my hand upon the greater Leviathan's snout. Cynthia joined me and placed her hand on the Leviathan's snout. The greater Leviathan's yellow eyes gazed upon each of us with an intimate farewell. Pulling away from the Typhon, the greater Leviathan peered up into the stars before diving beneath the ice. The greater Leviathan had entered his new domain. When it rises, the mighty are terrified. They retreat before its thrashing. Nothing on earth is its equal, a creature without fear. It looks down on all that are haughty and is king over all that are proud, I proclaimed. What was that about? Cynthia fidgeted with her hair. I believe you need to expand your literary knowledge, I remarked with a wink. Now we can go home. Cynthia was relieved as a space shuttle scouting Europa's surface landed on the ice. I can't wait to see Earth's beautiful sky, I anticipated. The survivors of the Europa expedition, including Cynthia Carolini and I, returned aboard the ZSS, where we had a well-deserved rest. After our brief stay on the ZSS, the two of us returned to Earth. Back home, we were given a celebratory hero's welcome. We brought news that entirely revolutionized humanity's perspective of the universe and life itself. At the National NASA ceremony, I gave acknowledgement to the honorable sacrifice of Koji Ryochi. When I gaze upon the sky, and the blue has been erased by the nighttime stars, I ruminate on our voyage to Europa. I am certain that out in the great beyond, we are not alone, as there is incredible life among the stars and beneath the ice. This is Captain Amir Jefferson, signing off. End of Part 8, and end of Europa Under the Ice. Calamity of the Chimera, Poetry Collection, written by Anthony Salmon. Monotonous Monologue. Have I gone on for far too long? Do you wish for some peace of mind? Has my consistent chatter seemingly agitated your nerves? Perhaps you should turn the page and walk away. Yet how can you escape the ideas rooted within your mind? Do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? Do you know what I know? Is truth a curse, or is truth unperceived majesty? When a form shifts apart, what remains prophesized? When I walk, I talk, and when I talk, I walk. Have I gone on for far too long? The day and the night are an infinite turmoil. This is a war between one with and one without. Have I lost all common sense, or is there a glimmer of ignorance? Perhaps I should take a breath and rest. Have I gone on for far too long? Am I your jester to make a mockery of the masses? Is this insanity or is this art? One more word is not enough. I am unsure what to say next. Have I gone on for far too long? One more verse is one more stance. Are you paying attention or have you nodded off? Am I joking or am I making sense? Perhaps you have failed to hear what I must say. In that case, you are of no help to me. We cast ourselves off. We confided to ourselves, so we lost our sight. We sinned so long ago that we thought our state was right. Yet can you see that barrier of stone that was once bone? It was built so long ago, yet do not be mistaken, for it denies to accept eternity. Your sight can be regained if you glimpse through the cracks within our wall. Were you afraid, or did you believe a lie? Nonetheless, we surround ourselves with a void. Something must feel off if you are human at all. Open your eyes, and the straight line will fall. We confide ourselves, so we lost our sight. We can regain our might through our sight. We were once part of the beyond, yet we severed the nerve. We desired dominion, so we rejected our role in the vastness. We gratified our egos in a world we fashioned to be minuscule. We confided to ourselves, so we lost our sight. You can see that the stone wall has fallen. It fell so long ago, yet you denied that truth. Take a step, and then another, until you've passed the boundary. The colors, sky, and air are the truth of infinity. We confided to ourselves, so we lost our sight. You strode further and further into the expanse. What was once a glimmer of light is fully revealed. Is this beauty? Is this truth? Is this goodness? When you look back, the barrier of stone that was once bone is gone. What surrounds you now? Our timely pasture is in a standstill. When you cross the boundary, the choice has been made, as the future is no dream. You've left it all behind. Are you satisfied? Will you be fulfilled? Do you even know why I am inquiring? Or have I crossed the boundary? When you were there, were you silent? When you were there, did you yearn? When you were there, could you run? When you were there, knowledge you bestowed. When you cross the boundary, the choice has been made, as the future is no dream. Every sensation is one. You have no need to hide. We live eternally in the memory of a dying light. May I reassure you with some hope. When you cross the boundary, the choice has been made, as the future is no dream. I can recall when I was silent. I can recall when I yearned. I can recall when I ran. I can recall when you bestowed knowledge. When you cross the boundary, the choice has been made, as the future is no dream. We are told nothing lasts forever, yet there is always a dawn after the fall of dusk. The boundary is the past, the memory is the future. What is left when your eternity is now? I am speechless upon witnessing arranged rocks and infinite pastures. There is nothing I can say that will ever serviceably compensate for the expectations you cite. Therefore, I am inclined to bid you adieu. Adam, the last man. We made this world through a lack of faith and a heart of despair. I was named after an old fable, perhaps the original fable. I abandoned my father when I blessed the guardian who coiled around the border. The marrow of my ancestors rots in what was once a garden. The foul blood refused to multiply. The only remnant of my beloved wife is a single rib. I pride myself as the Homo Imperator, yet my dominion is merely made of dust. I have no hair, I have no home, I have no hell. I am the last child. I do not write love songs. The dream has kept me from my sleep. There was once a child who believed. There was once a child who dreamed. There was once a child who knew how to sneeze. Allergies aside, the child insisted I toil. A child of hope has become a beast of pride. A child of romance has woven a web of neglect. A child of sincerity has indulged cynicism. A child of heroism has a dragon to contend with. The dream has kept me from my sleep. Pain lies in the wake of what the righteous forsake. My ambition is a blessing of regret. If I were wise, now would be the time to apologize. When given my time, I fear I will make light of my blight. The dream has kept me from my sleep. There is no one left to love. Such a surprise when you forgot to be kind. I failed to atone, so I was left like a stone. It's too late to say yes, yet I still would have given my best. The dream has kept me from my sleep. Must they judge me as cruel or a fool? The child made a forfeit upon my triumph. The child's folly ensnared a fate that deemed his delusions. Without this dream I cannot sleep, yet without sleep I cannot dream. Was my quest in vain when I was slain? Dusk of His Sight. This is the culmination of time and soul. How can they know? How can they see? There is truth written within. Is rejection decreed as a lack of comprehension? They deem it far too bizarre as a defiance of faith and sensibility. Only in dreams does one know all there is to glimpse. One here has sought to know more than can be sung. What can these words contain if the quest is merely out of pure sight? Will sacrifice of self and the collapse of might be all for naught? This is the culmination of time and soul. Do they lack to compensate for what they cannot contemplate? In fear they cast away the labors of the greats, they satisfy discontent. Relinquish ignorance and turn against the masses, they are still one. An unmoving conglomerate seeking simplicity, they are the masses. This is the culmination of time and soul. He is out of time and perhaps out of words. He seeks more than this seclusion. He has labored far too long. Will he have freedom granted or writhe within oneself as unknown to the masses? He is satisfied, yet pursues a throne unjustified by humankind. He has transgressed. Is this the culmination of time and soul? He bids farewell and apologizes for all the wrong which he wrought. His creation was paramount against the piety they bestowed. They congratulate and justify all the pain it took to write. The time has risen to walk out with all his might. The law of time is everlasting and ever-consuming. He walks off the stage forevermore. The end. The end, the end, the end, the end, the end, the end, the end. That was the end of the book. If you have read the entirety of this nonsense, then I must thank you for wasting your time and your life. There are other ways to say the end, and many of them are more elegant. Examples of synonyms include finale, conclusion, resolution, ultimately, long last, terminate, last stand, denouement, culmination, coda, cease, demise, and fin. I am referring to the fin of a fish.